Good morning, and welcome to the June 26, 2025 meeting of the Chatham County Public School Audit Committee. I will call the meeting to order and thank many of our staff and board members who were just recently in this room, I feel like, sometime last night. So welcome back. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the agenda for the meeting. All in favor? The agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the April meeting. Are there any corrections, additions, or modifications to the minutes? Seeing or hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 24th meeting. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the April 24th, 2025 meeting. All in favor? The minutes are approved. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Underwood.
Thank you. This next item is the summary of reports. This is the annual report out that supports the strategic plan as it relates to the summary of various internal audits and school site reviews used by the district. If you can shift to the graph form, this is the focus of where the strategic plan KPI results are. As you can see from last year to this year, the completion rate is the same, and that is due to the donation and grants audits, as well as the human resource audit is still on there, and that is the completed in the prior. However, if you notice this year, the percentage completed this year, it has increased. So I think, connecting it to the strategic plan has pushed the narrative to make sure that the strategic thinking in applying, how long is this going to take? How long, how much funding do we have the resources in order to make this happen in the timely fashion? I think those responses to those dates have really assisted in making sure that the completion, the dates that have provided support, the completion rate of this year. As of management change, what you can see for there have been 3 recommendations that was requested for change, with the latest 2 in the graduation rate. That has been requested to change. And then what was previous for the donation and grant, that, as you can see now, it is completed. Okay. As for percentage reporting out in 2024, as you can see, that has decreased, but that also is in support of those things that have completed this year. So that supports that relationship there. So reporting next year, as you can see on the grid as well, we have added the June timeframe. We have added the date on there so that when that is to be reported. So you have some understanding that June 2025 date is actually in reference to when it is reported to us. So that next audit committee meeting date will be the date that we reported out to you. And you can see this reflected in the detailed information in the reports afterwards. You also will note if there was an original date and a date change, it shows the current date, and that current date is really the new date of which they changed it to. Do we have any questions?
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that those dates were really helpful, and I like the format of having the original date and then the change date. That lets us know what our progress is. So I just want to commend you on that. And then one of the questions I have later about the report is driven by the fact that we do have an original date and then, progress of when it was supposed to happen, and we have some things that haven't happened. So it allows us to do some better monitoring in real time. So thank you.
Any other questions? Just quick follow-up. When will the graduation rate audit management, when will that be finished? When did we move that to?
So I'm able to speak to that. So part of the extension for the graduation rate audit is we want to fold in some of the actions with the upcoming grading audit because those are similar actions that need to take place. So we'll be reviewing IHA, which is part of the next steps for the graduation rate audit.
Okay. So the graduation plan will move to the grading plan, and the grading plan is expected to be covered in September?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
All right, we will need to vote on this. This is formally also for our own standards. Through the government auditing standards, we have to conduct follow-ups. And in that follow-up process, it allows us an opportunity to design how that follow-up occurs. And so we use this tool as to show that we are following up with management to see where the management action plan actions are and if they are completed. So if we can approve this, we can move this forward to the board as well.
I will entertain a motion to approve the summary of audits as presented.
I move to approve the summary of audits as presented.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the summary of audits. All in favor? The audit is approved.
Thank you. This next item is our audit plan for fiscal year 2026. Right now, this plan is designed only for the current employees that we have on hand. As I mentioned before, the previous years, we've always been hopeful, and we've kind of over budgeted. So there is some discontinued that I will discuss, but I do want to highlight right now in the weeks to come, we do have 8 applicants for that open position that we will be interviewing for. So we may at some point have to come back and provide some additional or request additional approval for some other audits once we have that additional person hired. So we have that time. But as of right now, because many of us are new, to our audit committee, I want to walk through this a little bit more than I've done in the past. With the audit plan, we do like to have you understand, what this objective is and how we function within the district, as well as the resources that we have and the hours that we provide. In addition, we provide to you the risk assessment procedures that we performed, so you can see that we are not coming forward with these ideas just because we came up with them. We have discussions and interviews with staff. We watch all board meetings and committee meetings, ask questions and follow-up questions on those things as we identify risks that we may have identified within those, as well as holding discussions with cabinet and getting their feedback on what they see as a need for our department to assist them. So with that being said, the next area we show what types of audits we do. Compliance audits is really just those strict review of procedures and operation. Are you complying with them, whether it's the internal rules, the policies, or just procedures or decisions that were made. Performance audits are a little more in depth. We look for the efficiency and the effectiveness of the program that exists as they are designed by the district with their goals and objectives. There is a compliance component in there, so I don't want to throw that out. There is a compliance component to a performance audit, but we dig a little further. We do highlight our non-audit services, which you will not see in the audit plan. Those are those requests from management that are agreed upon, and we do not report those to you all, but we do report our time that we do and have that in connection with assisting management. So does anybody have any questions of non-audit services? Because I know sometimes there have been some questions that have led up to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed my section.
I'm sorry.
No, I just couldn't find it. If you don't mind, I'd like to just go back to the summary of audits. I had questions about our HR discipline guidance.
Yes.
And filling long and short-term vacancies. So the HR discipline guidance is on physical page 14. The pages aren't numbered, but it's the back of page 7, page 14. It's item 2.1. The observation with district's employee discipline guidance is ineffective to ensure consistency of practices across the district. And 2.1 was to reevaluate the employee discipline program and utilize SHRM's best practice models for a discipline system comparison. And then that was supposed to happen. There's 2 other things under it. It's in progress, and the original date to get this done was July 2024. We're supposed to be reviewing and updating G policies on this, and then the current completion is this month. what made this, what created the delay in doing that?
Deanna, I will speak a little bit, but if you would like to support that as well. So one of the things was the G policies was vast. So in relationship with that, and then also the compensation study, a lot of that affected those G policies. So it's just the timing of all that that is delayed. So as you've seen over the past couple of months, those G policies are coming in. We have some more Gs planned for August as well. So on our end that we have received, and that's why we see it as incomplete, because those G policies that we need, that we felt was important to be included with this has not been conducted at this point. And so Deanna, do you want to support providing?
Leah, you pretty much said,
Okay.
because we have been bringing policies to the board for review. So we are still going through some of them, but we have been sending policies for review and approval.
Okay, thank you. So when you say that they need to be sent to the board for review, does that mean that you're evaluating them, getting happy with them, and then sending them to us?
Yes.
That is correct.
That is correct. Because the
Okay.
process for policy review is, again, going to cabinet, getting cabinet to review the policies for their particular ownership area. And then if there's any changes, then there's discussions of that. And then it has to go through the in-house attorney, and then it goes through the board attorney. And then it finally comes to the board for the first read and then
Okay.
the second read. So it takes some time.
I appreciate that. We did a policy review of all the board policies a couple of years ago, and we did it in a very short period of time. And it was time consuming. It was, it was like a thesis, all the things that we had to review and then comment on. So I understand the time it takes. And I accept the answer. The only reason I brought that up is that this is the season that we see all of the consequences for people not following the discipline policy, because this is when people don't have contracts reviewed. This is when we have employment hearings. This is when the failure of following our policies or having bad policies manifests. So when you see that we're taking longer to fix these policies, I was like, okay, what is it on us or is it on something else? How do we fix that? Because the costs, this is someone's career. Whether or not someone follows a policy or whether a policy is clear or communicated, it's someone's career, it's someone's livelihood. So I just wanted to make sure that whatever was in the way to getting that done, we got out of the way.
Yes.
So thanks for the explanation.
Now, the procedures are in place and they have been developed. So understand too, when we have a date change, it has to be the whole thing and not just part of it. And that's why you're going to see on the audit plan, we do want to audit the employee progressive discipline process.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. And then the other question was about filling of vacancies, and I can't find where it was, but there was a finding of filling short and long-term vacancies. And
I believe that was under the speech, was that under the SLP audit? Does it relate? Let me
I think it was later.
yeah. Oh, or is that for the same, okay, the same.
It was
Yeah.
item 1.4. Is that before or after the one I just? I can't
No,
find it.
that is before.
Okay.
After, that is for I believe it's for the audit of student support services. Develop plans for filling short and long-term staff vacancies that do not include MTSS, RTI, EIP, REP.
Yes.
Develop a toolbox for administrators
Thank
of
you.
recommendations. And I am sorry, I did forget to put the numbers on. I have put it bold letters now for me to
Thank
do
you.
that for you all.
Thanks. That's
In my checklist.
page 16. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we had a discussion last night about vacancies and the consequences that it has for the district. And so in looking at this, what occurred to me was the solution was to develop a toolbox for administrators for recommendations for filling short-term and long-term staff vacancies that don't include these areas as substitutes or replacements. And it says completed. But this solution the solution seemed to be short-term, like temporary filling of the position, not permanent recruitment approaches or permanent approaches to eliminate the vacancy. And I don't know if that's how I'm looking at the language.
Well, and Derek, if you can support on this one. So the develop of the toolbox is really to give administrators new ideas on how to fill these positions. Not necessarily, because it was, the thought was warm body or no warm body, right? So the toolbox was to give them new, innovative ideas to how do I fill this and maintain the rules and provide them those resources.
Okay. So, I mean, that's helpful, and that's what it read as. It read as, how we get a warm body in this seat.
Right.
But I think what Dr. Howard Hall referred to last night was, how do we get the committed warm body in the seat for this young person for their whole duration? So I'm reading this as, how do we get a warm body in the seat? Maybe we have a sub for 2 weeks. Maybe we have, a teacher on loan. But this recommendation, and this is beyond the scope of audit, you guys find what the issue is and they give you a response. I'm just elevating this to our attention for the superintendent, is that we're saying, okay, how do we deal with vacancies?
Yes. So I understand your point.
Okay.
The action does not really meet the need of the recommendation. It's a short-term solution or a piecemeal solution to a longer-term problem. So we'll need to take a look at that. It's a concerted effort of building a pool of candidates for principals to have, which, as you know, that position in and of itself there's a national shortage, and we're working with external organizations to try to fill some of those gaps. But it's also the principal being proactive in reaching out, interviewing, and following through with the HR process. So it has multiple hands that need to be on it, but I think I understand the sentiment of your point. We need to refine the actual action that we're going to take so that it meets the essence of the concern.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yes, that's what I meant. Didn't articulate it well, but that's where I was going. Thank you. Those are all my questions, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. To get back to the audit plan, let me get back to. So again, does anybody have any questions for non-audit services as to what those are? Okay. So as our audit work plan for July 1st of 2025 to June 30th, 2026, I would like to highlight there are some that we've discontinued and some that we will carry over into fiscal 25. The audit of competitive process within the purchasing process and the audit of asset management has been discontinued because that third party that will be hired by the district will be reviewing those kind of processes. And so we've leaned on that. Again, do remember when we projected the audit plan last year, it was the mindset we were going to be able to hire another person. So we over budgeted our thoughts on what type of audits we could do. The cell phone usage in the classroom and the impact to the instructional environment, this recent act, the Distraction-Free Education Act, is going to affect that. So we don't like to audit dinosaurs, so in a way, this is now going to be a dinosaur, not in its true form, but we want to make sure this act is, we implement this act, and if we have to come back and look to make sure we are in compliance with this, we can do that as well. But right now, we are moving forward and discontinuing that due to that. The student promotion, we are going to reassess that in fiscal 27. Again, we want to allow for the recommendations of the audit of attendance and grading practices to be implemented as they may have impact on the promotional activities of a student. Again, we want to see how the district makes those changes, how they're implementing those changes, and to see that impact to the promotion of a student. Now, the audit of contract management is still in progress. That is scheduled for September to be brought to you, and the audit of purchase cards is also in progress, and that is scheduled for September 2025. So under the compliance audit section, as of last night, it went from 29 to 31 now schools because of the additional changes to principals. As you know, you'll see the words follow-up, new principal, follow-up, or 4-year. Our process is whenever there's a new principal on site, we come out and conduct a business process review. If there has been no change over the 4-year time period, we come back, at 3 years. On that 4th year, we come back just as a review, as a refresher, make sure the controls are continuing to work as they had changed them based on that first review that we did. The follow-up review is based on those where there's an error rate of 20% or more, and we have to come back for that particular area. So again, it went from 29 business process reviews to 31. So those other additional schools are not on there that you can, that we're going to do. But we will present those. The goal is to have that to you all by November. The other areas of compliance audits that we will look at is the audit of travel practices. The scope of this audit is to review the district's procedures compared with the district's travel practices, and that also includes any state law requirements as it becomes to travel requirements for government employees. The audit of employee progressive discipline, like I just mentioned, Dr. Hoskins Brown, this is to support looking at those procedures to making sure that the acceptance of those procedures and are they being implemented as they are designed. So the scope will review the implementation of the new procedures and the consistency of those practices. And also identify any best practice and areas for improvement. Does anybody have any questions for the compliance audits? For the performance audit area, we are looking at the audit of non-traditional program supports. The scope of this audit will review some non-traditional programs such as Students in Twilight, ACES, et cetera. An audit of the English to Speakers of Other Language, ESOL. The scope of this will review the current ESOL model to the previous ESOL model to identify best practice, cost savings, and areas of improvement. We're going to look at we're going to audit the Wellness Center. The scope of this is to review the Wellness Center services and its impact to the district's students and employees, because the Wellness Center isn't just for students, it also supports employees as well. The audit of program management. The scope of this audit will review the district's program management model within the operations division and to identify best practices, cost savings, and areas of improvement. We will look at the audit of the work order system. This is the system where people request maintenance requests or needs as it relates to maintenance and operation. The scope of this will review the utilization of that work order system to the technical capabilities and identify best practice, cost savings, and areas of improvement, as well as looking at auditing the one-to-one technology access. I know that's language that's often spoken of at the board meetings as well, but that scope of this audit will review the district's current model for technology access. It will also identify areas of improvement and cost analysis of the current model to the future needs of the district. Do you might have any questions concerning those?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in the audit of program management, and how we're tracking program efficiency, program effectiveness, how we're spending timely implementation of program, not like balloon programming where we do nothing for a short period and then we hurry up and do everything at the end of the year. So can you tell me what you're going to be looking at with program management? Is what I'm thinking about the type of things that would be assessed, or they're going to be assessing other things?
I think we're looking at other things. So this is really the capital projects program management, and maybe I need to clarify that in the and I'll add that before it goes to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, this is, right now, we are kind of in a way looking at that stuff with the return on investment program inventory. We are working with district to assist with looking at those things, and hopefully next year our audit plan will be more robust in that relationship with that program inventory. So we are kind of moving in that direction for program management, but in this particular case, we're looking at the capital projects program management and all the different program managers we have for the different sites, as you often see in CIC meetings.
Okay, that works. Thank you. And then for the work order system, is there a component of that audit that's going to look at responsiveness for the internal customer? Like it used to be that the work order system was like absolutely awful. Like it was not unusual to get a call from it. Well, staff members would use the system, and then at some point, if the system failed, they might call a school board member and say, we need pest control, or can you call somebody to get the AC fixed? And we revised the system, and it seems like it was more responsive. So there's a piece that has our internal users, our employees
100%.
giving us feedback.
Yep, we're
Okay.
going to definitely go to the front end on all levels, especially not only the people making the request and the utilization, to really the workers that are doing the request, because sometimes, things that have come across our desk is things that we've identified as this is an area we need to look at. Sometimes the detail from the end user that's requesting it is not detailed enough for them to know what they should have done. So then when we get there, that's like, oh, we needed to do this, but this wasn't in here. It's multifaceted. So we will be looking at, when we say the utilization, that means when we use it, are they using it? What's the response rate? How's it connected to the inventory of items that we have? Because could we improve our inventory of the warehouse of items that we have and do more cost effectiveness in order to make sure we're maintaining the supply? So there's not a 2 or 4 week hold because we have to place an order for these items that should have already been in our warehouse. It's
Yeah.
multifaceted, yes.
That's helpful to know. And I mean, just for anyone listening, I don't mind getting the phone calls, about whatever. But if I'm getting the phone calls and I know the system is really, 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 really broken. So that's helpful to know. Dr. Watts, the work order system kind of represents a lever by how we're dealing with our facilities. And we've improved, I believe that we have improved our response time to work orders over the years. I don't know where we are now. We might be in like a level area and not improving. But is there consideration of there being a key performance indicator that might come out of how we're managing our maintenance via our work order process?
So there is currently a KPI for work order, but it's for completion, not tied to the time it takes. But I think Ms. Davidson is in the audience. She might be able to speak to it more, but we currently do have a work order
I
KPI.
thought we did.
We do, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So one is related to the 30 days and one is related to the 7-day window. So are we closing those work orders within that 30-day or that 7-day window? And then just to step back for a brief moment, one thing we're also doing to improve our customer service to our schools is we are amending, are working with HR to amend a position that's vacant in my area. My admin has joined another team within the district to make more money. So taking that admin to be a customer service focus so that when a principal puts in a ticket, this person can serve as a point of contact. So they will call and say, Principal Smith, you've entered your ticket. Here's the expected timeline. And if you have any questions or if it escalates to be a higher level, call us so we can help get somebody out there faster or another resource so that we better serve our customers as our principals.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate knowing that. And I think the completion was a problem in the past. It would be interesting to know if there's an easy way to track savings once we get this audit done. And there may not be at all, but if we're getting our work done and managing our facilities, taking care of what we already own means we don't have to replace it and, we're maintaining it. So I would be interested in knowing from the audit after it's completed this year whether or not there is a key performance indicator that lets us know how we save by being responsive in a timely manner. Thank you.
Dr. Howard.
Yes, good morning, and thank you. I know that everybody's work order is a priority. Working in the school district, I realized sometimes if something was going on, and then you get a call from central office, everything stopped because we need to work on this particular work order. So are you looking at the prioritizing of work orders as far as high level, low level, medium? Because
Yes, we are.
everybody that submits feel that their work order is
Yes.
of importance.
Yes,
So how-
my understanding, there's already a structure, what should determine what's high, medium, and low, so we're gonna make sure that that is we'll work with management to see if that still meets the needs, as well as everybody's complying to it as
And
well.
also like a timeline of a wait list, because if you have so many high levels, will you ever have an opportunity to address the lower levels, if that makes any sense?
We do track our backlog as well.
Yeah.
So, and we report out on how long it takes us to get to that backlog, but that's absolutely one of the opportunities we can continue to review. One of our other opportunities is how do we ensure everybody's putting tickets in? Sometimes it's easier just to call and to say, hey, I need you to come out. And if it's an emergency, absolutely. But as you mentioned, everybody's ticket is an emergency to them. So understanding where that falls within the prioritization schedule.
Okay.
Any other questions on the audit plan? With the modification to the title of the audit of program management to capital project program management, I would entertain a motion to approve the audit plan for FY '26.
I move that we approve the amended audit plan, period.
Oh, yeah, and also the other amendment, that it's 31 business process reviews. I
Correct,
apologize.
31.
So 2 amendments.
Yeah, we will be updating the schools on
Right.
that list
So it'll
as
come
well.
to the board clean.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yes,
is there a second to that amended motion? All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we accept the FY 2026 audit plan. All in favor? All right, it's your audit plan, Leah.
Thank you. Like I said, if we are able to hire that new employee and we find we need to add new audits, the requirement is for us to come back to you and seek approval as well. So hopefully that will occur.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that'll occur. All right, so the next item, as you can see, this is the audit of graduation practices. We are not seeking approval. We will bring this back in September. Due to the level of complexity of the possible response, again, Dr. Hoskins-Brown, I kind of like how you lifted up that short-term to long-term approach. The response really needs to be more multifaceted. So we want that, my understanding, district wants to have some more conversations and feedback from various focus groups before they decide really what their final response is, instead of just giving a generic response for the audit committee. So there will be discussion. We're going to go through the audit today, but it's not going to be for approval, but it is to support for a discussion. And if district management wants to lift any other comments concerning what they need, please do.
Dr. Rogers, you want to address that?
I will just say that nothing in this report came as a surprise to me at all. I have long suspected that there is great variance in how teachers grade, what they grade, the percent of different assignments, and how they are included in a student's report card. My biggest concern and desire to have this looked into to affirm what I believed is that it has significant implications for kids, for scholarships, participation in athletics, valedictorian, clubs, extracurricular activities, and the fact that practices vary classroom to classroom and school to school is of great concern, and it speaks to our calibration across the district in terms of expectations for students in terms of grading. So you do not see a management action plan. I anticipate the work that has to be done around grading practices will take us at least a year. It is a very sensitive topic for teachers. They like to maintain their autonomy in how they grade. They don't like anybody in their grading business. And so this is going to require a lot of focus group, small group, and change in mindset. And whenever I've seen this done in other places, it's often media-worthy because there is often a lot of resistance from teachers in how you advance this. So again, you do not see a management action plan because it's going to be more comprehensive than what these sentences that you see in most plans. We need to think about a whole year-long strategy for how to address this and how to implement it in the upcoming school year. So I appreciate your patience. You'll actually be our first focus group And so your feedback and input will help guide how we advance the management action plan moving forward.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jack.
All right, good morning. So we have completed our audit of grading practices, and I'm glad to be here to share the report with you. So for this audit, we had 5 objectives. First, we were looking at reviewing the district's policies and procedures related to grading to ensure compliance. Like Leah said, compliance is part of any of our academic and performance audits. We were looking to determine if grading criteria and grading procedures are applied consistently within and across schools in the district. We were looking at the use of extra credit, makeup work, and credit recovery to determine consistency throughout the district. We were looking to evaluate consistency of course content and implementation of district-approved curriculum across teachers. And we looked at the use of the district's learning management system, which is Brightspace, to evaluate students' access to assignments, notification of assignments, and how those correlate with grading practices. The Brightspace objective was at the request of management, why that was included. So in Georgia, state guidance provides pretty limited parameters related to grading. So it allows for a lot of autonomy for school districts and schools to determine their practices. Here in the district, grading is outlined in board policy IHA, and this describes the formulas that are used in calculating grades for students. It provides guidance in how teachers approach makeup work and extra credit, and it establishes procedures for progress reporting, grade changes, other things like that. No prior audits have been done specifically focused on grading practices. We did in the graduation rate audit that we mentioned before. In that audit, we did have an observation and some recommendations related to grading because we found variability in the number of assignments teachers were using to determine grades. That audit was just focused on high school students earning credits towards graduation. So this audit, the grading practices audit, kind of builds on that in looking at grading throughout the district at all levels and other aspects related to grading. So for this audit, we focused on 12 schools. We had 4 elementary, 2 K-8, 3 middle, 3 high schools throughout the district. In addition, we focused on specific courses or subject areas for the audit to try to cover different content areas, different grade levels. So we had 3 at the elementary level, 3 at middle school, and then 6 at the high school level. And then from each of the schools in our sample, we selected 1 or 2 teachers to be part of the focus of the audit. So that gave us a pool of 66 teachers that we looked at for the different areas of the audit. And we found that there's just general variability in approaches to grading across teachers and across schools in the district. This comes from the minimal guidance that state policy and the district's grading policy provide that allows for a lot of autonomy on the part of schools and on teachers to determine grading procedures. And then procedures that are in place for monitoring grading are focused mainly on compliance in making sure that grade books are calculated properly and that teachers are entering grades when they should be. So in the audit, we have 2 observations. The first is related to variability in grading criteria. We looked at grading criteria a few different ways. First, we looked at, from a compliance perspective, we looked to make sure that the grades that students are receiving agree with the formulas that are outlined in grading policy. And we found that by and large, those do agree with the formulas outlined in board policy IHA. We also looked at how frequently students are completing tasks. So looking in grade books in Power School, making sure that students consistently have grades on all the assignments listed. And generally was over 90% across schools, across subject areas, in looking at it from that perspective. We found that of the schools in our sample, most of them had school-specific grading procedures in place, mostly related to how many grades teachers were expected to have in a given week or a given quarter, and found variability in these procedures. And then in interviewing teachers, we asked them about the grading procedures at their school, and also found variability within teachers at the same school and how they described their school's grading policy. So they didn't necessarily align with each other or agree with the written procedures that were in place. We looked at weights and quantities of assignments over the course of a 9-week grading period, and we found variability in all categories across all grade bands. Some examples of things that we found were some teachers would have no graded activities in a given category, so no assessments over the course of a quarter or no classwork activities over the course of a quarter. We found some instances where a single assignment counted for at least 50% of a student's grade for the quarter. So if there was only one assessment and assessments count for 60% of the quarter grade, then that assessment is 60% of the student's grade. We found at the high school level, some teachers would vary the weights of assignments in their grade books. So a unit test would count more than a quiz, whereas other teachers, every assessment would count equally. And that was the case at elementary and middle as well, where everything was weighted equally within the different categories. And then in looking at extra credit, makeup work, and credit recovery, board policy allows for a lot of teacher discretion here as to whether to even offer these as options for students. So board policy, there are requirements for makeup work, for excused absences within a given time period, but then teachers have discretion whether to allow additional opportunities for makeup work. Teachers have the option of whether or not to offer extra credit. And in talking with teachers, they approach this very differently. So it was kind of hard to gauge, how they approach each of these areas. Extra credit was the one, because assignments in Power School would be listed as extra credit or optional assignments. That was the one we were able to look at most closely. And we found of the teachers that do offer extra credit, about a third of them, it didn't align with how extra credit is described in board policy. So in board policy, extra credit it's expected to be related to standards, it's available to all students, and it's described in kind of those classwork activities that make up the grade, and some of the examples we found didn't align with that guidance. So our recommendations for this observation are to develop written guidance related to the quantity of assignments in each category, used by teachers in determining grades, and then to establish systems for monitoring teachers' use of extra credit, makeup work, and credit recovery to ensure that implementation consistently aligns with board policy.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any questions? Dr. Howard?
I'm just sitting here thinking, as a former teacher, and how we had the old-fashioned blue grade books. Is there any type of software available that these things can be calculated, such as class participation, extra credit, homework, quizzes, exams? It'll make life a whole lot easier for teachers, and it'll be consistent if there was just some type of way to enter those grades in a software, because it's going to always be inconsistent with teachers, with the number of assignments. So if it was some kind of way that we can,
I mean, that's what Power School does, yeah.
does it categorize it? Does it categorize each class group?
Set up the percentages so that homework counts 10%, formal assessments count 40%, regular assignments count whatever the percentages you want to put in there, yes.
Right, because of course I wasn't around with the Power School, but if the Power School has those different options, why is it so inconsistent if it's already there to enter these particular categories?
So I can, and then,
Laborious.
so in Power School, in our student information system, so it's already set up to calculate the grades based on how teachers enter or label the assignment. So the calculation is accurate. The challenge is the variability in the amount of assignments that teachers may provide to students. And so I think that's the real challenge that we have in the inconsistency. So the system is already designed to calculate it correctly, but it's just the number of assignments that teachers where we have the variability.
So if I'm a teacher and I only give one assessment in a quarter, and that assessment is 60% of the kid's grade, if the kid makes a 30 on that assessment, there is absolutely no way that a kid can recover that. There's no way. I mean, they could make 100s on everything else and never be able to make up that 30%. So I would go so far as to say recommendations also need to include timeliness for when things are put in Power School.
Amen.
Because
As a parent,
that
amen.
sat on the other side, I would have concerns about seeing my child's grade all semester, and then a day or two before report cards come out, a lot of other different grades get added at the last minute, and there's very little time for a parent to pivot or intervene. I could go much further than these recommendations go in terms of grades. This is a good start.
Ms. Campbell?
So before I start, I do want to commend the district on doing this audit, because it says that, and I don't think that you said it, but in the audit, it said that this was the first audit of its kind that we've done in this district. And that demonstrates a lot of transparency and willingness to take it head on. So good for the cabinet and for Dr. Watts, and thank you to the audit team. With the 30 that Dr. Watts just referenced, I feel like when I read some of these reports, I find that maybe it's less common to give a child a 30 without any hope of success, rather than what I fear, which is that we have sort of masked academic deficiencies. As in, we're undermining the trust in what our GPAs are in promotion and graduation requirements. And it harkens back with the timeliness of putting grades in, that we weren't taking attendance successfully at some of these schools. So, one recommendation that I would give is that we really get some robust policies in place, that autonomy or no autonomy, give people the guideposts that they need to stay within, so that we can, I hate to use the word mandate, but I mean, make sure that people are being held accountable for these children's grades. Literacy is our North Star, and one struggle that I have had in understanding completely, and I think the community has had, and parents, is if we have, if we're working towards higher literacy rates, but kids are graduating at the rates that they are we sending functionally illiterate children into the world? Because we see that they have a good grade here, but we have no idea what that grade actually represents. Does it represent their knowledge base? Because it's not, to me, just about them, passing and going into the world. To me, it seems cruel that we would tell a child, you did really well. You're not only going to graduate, but you have a good GPA. And then they go into the world thinking they can take it on and they're successful, but they really don't have what they need educationally to succeed.
So you're speaking more, I believe, about the quality of assignments. And that is a harder thing to get your hand around. So you have teacher A that on a test asks kids to write on same standard of learning. Teacher A asks students to write a 5-paper essay. And teacher B says, draw a picture. Mm-hmm. Or fill in the blank. So this assessment of learning is of a much higher, robust, rigorous quality than this assignment, and both kids could make an A, but both kids demonstrated their proficiency in much different ways. So and that is a much harder thing to get your hands around, because at that point, you're asking teachers to be calibrated across the district on what type of assignments are grade level assignments. And that is even more difficult. You also have to consider special ed students ESOL students that need different modifications.
Well, we could personalize that, I feel like, without much.
Can, yeah. But they also need exposure to grade level material.
And inclusion, I
Absolutely.
totally agree with that. I think special circumstances call for, special requirements that we put into the policy. But I guess that is true. I am speaking to that. I'm also, though, speaking to some teachers avoid giving zeros or are told that they cannot put a zero in the book, or there's a minimum grade that can be listed, which I have actually heard about from parents, because I am the parent who, if my child comes to me, and my children are driving somewhere, and they're probably watching this, so they will laugh, but if they say, I didn't turn this in, can you ask my teacher if I can get credit for it? Absolutely not. Like, your teacher will give you the grade that they give you, you should have turned it in. So I feel like in these circumstances, it reminds me of the attendance policy as well, and I think maybe there's a way we can incorporate some of this into that, where it helps us also track why students are getting zeros, where we know then how to offer the supports that they need, or know when it's time to hold them accountable for, cultivating them into adulthood. But the minimum grade thing, I mean, a parent told me from the district recently that her child made a 60 on something and she has no idea why, because they didn't even do the assignment. And I said, surely that's not the case. It seems like it may have been the case, because a 60 was the lowest grade. So again, I mean, yeah, I think there's a way to do this, and we have some really good, Mr. Butler has done a great job with the attendance policy, and it's, something that I feel like we can enhance as it goes on, and maybe the zero component here is something we can kind of push into that. But I don't want us to be afraid of doing things that maybe are very different, but also more structured, not to be punitive or to treat adults like children. We can still give them autonomy, but to hold them accountable where there's not so much discretion between leadership at schools, or because it sounds like it's not just between schools, like
could be in a
within the
school.
school, right? Like, some teachers feel one way, and then you ask another teacher and they give you a different example, and that's concerning. So, and the other thing was the grading behavior, based on, like, their grading behavior potentially, or just participation grades, like everybody gets a trophy kind of thing, and they get a grade for that. I mean, there is a way to, Dr. Watts, to speak to your, and this isn't the answer, nor do I think I have the answer, but as an aside, we do EOCs, and we do, GMAS testing, et cetera. Maybe there's a way to, going forward, as we look into this more deeply and do focus groups, maybe we could look within schools for grade distribution by course, if there are several teachers who teach it, and then take that data and compare it to each school in the district at the same grade level that teaches that course. So you can really start to notice inflated grades, if that makes sense. If the grade is inflated in 8th grade geometry or algebra because they're gluing macaroni to the page here, and they're doing algebra here, and they both have, really high grades, but then at the end of the course, their math is like, but again, this is going to take us accepting, because, the argument is usually, well, there's too much testing. And while I agree, we have to have some metric by which we measure success. And end of grade testing is what we use as a state. So we have to work within the bounds of what we're given, unless we come up with something new. And then we could compare the grades of the students that could or could not be inflated to how they performed on the end of grade test, and that would be a pretty solid indicator. And, in some classes, they get grades on these tests, which incentivizes the students to try to perform, not, color a Christmas tree with the bubbles, because they're bored or they don't care what they make on the test. So I would say, I guess, to sum it up here, correlate grades from different classes in different schools among the same subjects, and do school grade distributions by course. And then maybe we could all talk about a policy that would kind of at least give guideposts to what we expect, where it's not so fast and loose.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to go back to the minimum grade discussion. I was surprised to learn that that was even in effect. And so I did call a couple teachers in the district and just ask how they felt about it. And they said that it was extremely frustrating because students know what the minimum grades are. And so they do get responses from students that there's no need for them to do the assignment because they're not allowed to be failed. And so I guess I'm just curious, what is the rationale? I understand autonomy, but what is the rationale behind allowing individual schools within the district to set minimum grades? Because it seems to me like that metric more than anything would affect inconsistency.
So it's really a philosophical stance. So if you think about the range between an A, B, C, it's usually a 10-point range. But when you think about an F goes from what, 69 all the way down to a 0. So philosophically, one could say that if you give a kid a 0, they're likely never going, or even a 20, they're never going to recover from that, regardless of how many other assignments you give them, because there's not going to be enough, especially if that 20 is an assessment, and that assessment counts 60% of their grade. So why not just give them a 50, so they at least have a fighting chance to get up to a passing grade? There are kids that get a couple of zeros, and they can never come back from that. So it's like a philosophical stance, and it's a flawed system, I believe, across the country at higher ed and at all levels of academics, that an F has such a range, but every other grade span is like this neat little 10-point span. That we probably need to do something towards the bottom end to shore that up some. I think the whole grading thing needs to be reviewed. But I do understand where schools do the minimum grade, because they're just trying to give kids, a 0 is so unmotivational, especially if you get it like on a major assignment. You're never coming back. You might as well just stay home, because you're never going to come back from that if it's a major project. Especially if it's weighted very heavily. But I'll be happy to defer to our academics or our school leadership team for more. I mean, but it is philosophical more than anything else.
But it is against policy, is it not? Because when I saw it, I experienced this myself, and when I saw grades appearing for work that I knew that my child had not done, I was like, why is this sitting here?
Right.
This is supposed to be a 0. And the explanation that I got was, one, that they had gotten directive that this was what they should do. And I was like, I know that ain't right. And then second was that it was a placeholder for when the assignment was made up. And that if the assignment was not made up, then it was going to turn into the actual grade, which would have been a 0 or would have been whatever was earned. And that is what occurred. So when we did all the makeup work, everything that was the placeholder got converted to the grade, which for that philosophy, I don't entirely disagree with, because it does show, you're right, when the child logs in and they see, I got this 0, I have no way to make it to a passing grade. It's like, why am I going to do the makeup work?
Or even if the teacher, the teacher may not offer makeup work.
But all of that, when I was seeing that conversation, when I took that to the sitting superintendent at the time, the answers I got was, well, that's not policy.
That's the variance.
So if people are doing it, and it's not policy, that's problematic.
Right.
Because I assumed, I mean, after that, like hearing now that this is something that people think is okay, that we support.
We have to define as a district what our philosophical stance is, and I don't think that definition is in place. The philosophical stance should then guide the policy creation.
Okay.
And currently, yes, and currently policy does not define many of the things that were lifted up in the audit. And so I think that's part of what the action items will need to be, is to really develop, because schools have taken it upon themselves to establish what those grading procedures will be at their school in terms of the minimum number of assignments, what that threshold would be. And so schools have created that because the policy really has provided, in some ways, that autonomy for them to design that.
Okay, well, so I will tell you that it's not all corrupt to have placeholder grades, so I'll tell you an example in which I use it, that I have used it, and I don't teach very much anymore, but when I teach again, if I need it, I will use it. When I taught marine invertebrate zoology, it had a lot of moving parts. You had a lab, we went from bacteria to big critters, and there were a lot of assignments, papers, and students wanted to know how they were going to get to that goal, whatever their goal was for maintaining their GPA for scholarship or whatever. And so typically around midterm, I would give them, here are your grades, and here is what you would make if you make a B in all your remaining, like in order for you to get to your goal, you're gonna have to make an A in every single assignment. In order for you to get to your goal, you're gonna have to make at least an 80 in all these remaining assignments. I would give them a spreadsheet that said, this is what you look like right now, this is where you need to go. So putting in placeholders does help with morale and encouragement, and it gives students an intelligent way to look at where they're going. They do it at the end of the semester, those of them who care about their GPA, they do it like, what do I need to earn in this class to keep my GPA, to keep my eligibility for whatever I'm doing? So it's not so much, it's not an entirely corrupt practice, but it seems like it has been used in a corrupt way. Because if you are leaving that grade in there, and that's kind of the basis of some of my comments that are looking at this from a higher view, if you're the teacher that's trying to make sure that you don't have all your students fail, or all your students don't fail with a 30, your students failing with a 64 is different than your students all failing with a 32. And so.
But still, they're all Fs.
They
Either way,
are.
an F is a F.
They are all Fs for the young person. So I think there are a couple of ways that we need to look at the consequences of what we're going to see as we start doing this work. This is important work. One, we are not acknowledging the climate. And the climate is we have an avoid retention climate in our district. When I was a young person, people could get retained, and it was like, okay, well, it's unfortunate, but now we don't retain anybody. The only way you get retained is if you are a completely uncooperative family. We had our meeting a couple of months ago where you have all these credit recovery options, attendance forgiveness and waivers. It's like if you get retained, you truly have not had any of your educational needs served, and you and your family are completely uncooperative. And then you get retained. But besides that, we don't embrace retention. The other thing is, we don't question fine-scale operations at schools with high achievement. We may question it at schools with low achievement, but where you have high end of course, high pass rate, we're not going into the classroom to see how we're getting those grades. This audit tells us that we have that variability. But we have treated high achieving schools like, okay, you all are just teaching better. And the schools that are not doing well, okay, what's wrong with your teaching? Now we're seeing that variability is across different areas. Low achievement is a real-time issue, and we look at it as a real-time issue when we look at how schools are doing on GMAS, how schools are doing with end-of-course tests, but we're not talking about it in terms of the cumulative effects of you got a little person that went from one low achieving school or didn't do well or didn't meet their student learning outcomes there, then they go to the next school and that teacher has inherited everything that young person didn't know. And they have just that school year to get them to what Ms. Campbell was talking about, the student learning outcomes that are based by the Georgia standards. You got a kid that didn't meet the standards from another school that now has 1 9-month period to get everything, and it's on that teacher to do it. So that teacher endeavors to do so. What that means is whatever it takes to get that child there, they may do, and it may be so time intensive and so laborious that maybe they're behind in entering grades in Power School because they're doing one-on-one teaching. Or they're going to call or visit the home to try and figure out what's happening with achievement. This is
It's huge.
going to be
Huge.
really, really big, because teachers are inheriting the results of low-value grading practices. And so what we're talking about is how the teaching is happening in the classroom. They inherit whatever bad practice came from the previous teacher. I have a couple other things. Student learning outcomes, I think I just said, in one course rely on mastery from the previous course. And these outcomes are defined. We whined and complained and wailed at the college level when they started implementing student learning outcomes in formal assessment, because I didn't want somebody telling me how to teach marine invertebrate zoology. I know how to teach it, and I know how to get the student from not having mastery to mastery at the end of class. I didn't want somebody setting that for me, and I certainly didn't want to have to go on a software system and enter 5 different learning outcomes that go from low achievement to moderate to, to fair to good. I didn't want to have to do all that. But the value that it provided was that the student could see exactly what they needed to know to master that course. Well, if students are coming in and they're not able to meet the lowest student learning outcome, the teaching that needs to happen in that classroom is beyond what many are able to do with the number of students coming in that need that level of attention and the time in the day and the cooperation that they get from other outside factors. The other thing, I hate that this is your first focus group on this, because there's a lot more to say about this than I've even had time to digest. But I want to thirdly speak to what you said about the number of assessments. There's no way in the world there ought to ever be a class where there's only one assessment. There's no way to measure student growth with one assessment. You need to at least have one assessment that says, where are you?
But we don't set that, we don't set the number.
Yeah.
So,
But
right.
But if you are trying to measure, somebody with one assessment to me is somebody that doesn't like grading. And I don't love grading. But one assessment says, I hope you get it. And I hope you get it and you show me when you get it, because I'm not trying to grade all this stuff. I don't know any other reason for only having one assessment. You can't look at growth if you only have one data point. We knew this was happening when we were observing low end of course completion rates and high graduation rates. We asked about this 2 years ago with schools where we saw low end of course numbers, yet we got a 70% graduation rate. How did you graduate if you only had 30% of your students pass the end of course test? But we were like, okay, yay, we just had 2,100 graduates.
Yes.
But how? So we have to be prepared for the answer that we get when we do this work, because changing how we do things to react to these outcomes
It's going to be huge.
means there are going to be a lot of teachers who are going to be concerned about how they're going to be evaluated. There are going to be families that are going to have multiple retentions. I mean, just consider what it means to try to normalize instruction across the district and then implementing it. What if you tested everybody right now and put them at their current mastery level?
It's going to be huge.
I don't know that, it'll be interesting to see how that's going to be implemented, especially by 9 people who need to be elected. I just don't know how.
It will be huge, and that's one of the reasons why you don't have a management action plan, because of the dynamics. And yes, our board members should probably expect resistance and hear from parents, because when you start recalibrating some of this, you're going to have kids that, I think, when I first got here, I'll never forget, I was in a restaurant and a parent stopped by and was like, my child's been making A's and B's and we just took the GMAS and my kid did not pass and I don't understand. And I mean, at that moment, I knew what was happening. But you're going to have parents that for a long time have been told your kid is doing okay
And they're not.
because your kid has been getting A's and B's, and a recalibration could change that. It could. there is a significant amount of work that has to go on. This will take us at least a year. It has policy implications around promotion, retention. It's one of the reasons why we started with attendance, but we only went so far because all of this is embedded within that. So this is a year's worth of work, at least.
So this reminds me, one of the big reasons that I ran for school board was after teaching I taught at 2 college institutions. One was Virginia College, and the requirement, which has been discontinued since then, and the only requirement was that you either have a high school diploma or a GED. And in teaching medical assistant students who were very capable, but had very minimal basis for even incorporating data, new data in, they wanted to. If I taught it to them and I demonstrated it to them, they were good at it. Reading, not so much. Math, like medical math, not so much. And every time I would ask them where they went to school, it was in our district public schools. And it was compelling. And, you know, these kids were very capable, very driven, did this on their own at high cost. And it was one thing that propelled me into this seat. So as we talk about, you know, philosophical differences, I feel like that is a luxury that we do not have. We don't have the luxury of saying, well, philosophically, I think, you know, with all due respect, if a child makes a 32 or a 64, they still don't know the material. And to be honest, I totally agree with what Dr. Hoskins-Brown is saying. I like the 0 placeholder. I would do the same thing because it would get them in my office. Ms. Campbell, what can I do? What can I do? Is this a 0 forever? Well, you know, and I was strict. No, if you didn't tell me you weren't going to be here, you get half credit, that's it, right? And teachers can be that way. They can be as strict as they want or not, but we need to give them guideposts where the 0, because they're putting in grades successfully and the student knows how to engage the platform to see their grades in a timely way, they instantly are triggered to, what do I need to do to fix this? But to say that the minimum grade that you can get is a 50 or a 60, to me, is just, this is how things were done forever. And, you know, like it or not, grades are grades, and we have to have some measurable starting point. And if they're giving them one assessment and letting them fail off of that one assessment, that's obviously completely wrong. That is doing a child wrong. But, you know, we are supposed to be the experts, particularly the cabinet and Dr. Watts. I mean, you know, you guys know what is required to make education successful. And if a parent doesn't like it, I hate that. But I agree with Dr. Hoskins-Brown and Dr. Watts. This is going to be extreme. Just like when we rolled out literacy and we realized, okay, again, I'll say it publicly, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. So you're going to see little tiny blips of success until it really takes off. And that is not an indication of our inability to teach literacy. But when we do this, it's going to be the same thing, because when you see literacy scores and then you realize that those children fell through the cracks and now they're in middle school and high school, and they're graduating with such success, something is wrong. And yes, there will be retentions, and we're going to have to figure that out. But if we truly care about the success of children, we have to do it. And we have to draw a line in the sand, and we have to mean what we say, and we have to err on the side of less philosophy. If it were up to me, you know, this is just my idea, I think we have to just draw a line in the sand and take the feelings and emotion out of it, not see children individually and have special circumstances and all of that, but quit writing policies for the N=1, right? Policies for the vast majority of students that we teach, treat all of them like we care about all of their success, and just draw a line in the sand. Because again, what I think, and I say this all the time, but you have to show children that you believe that they can succeed, which means that you raise expectations and you set a standard, and it tells that child, poor, rich, whatever race, whatever creed, whatever religion, it doesn't matter. The standard is here because you're just like everybody else, and we think that you are capable. And if we don't start doing that, these kids are going to either get through school and think that they're capable, and they're going to find out that they are sorely mistaken when they're gone, and it's going to be our fault. Or I feel like this is something that needs to be addressed. It needed to be addressed for a long time. I'm super glad we're doing it. But I think we need to all accept that this is something that is going to cause a lot of pushback, but consensus is never found in difficult decisions. But this is how change is going to be made, and it is going to be very glaringly obvious that a lot of children have fallen through the cracks. But if we don't address it, it's going to be our fault.
But get ready to pay for it, not but and. All of that's true, but when this, our system relies on
Right.
elementary school. Oh, I'm sorry.
Howard Hall had a comment. Howard.
I apologize.
Yes, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm listening to a lot of the college examples, but here I am in early childhood. And one major problem is, according to Georgia state law, that a child does not have to enroll in school until they're 6 years old. So the proof is in the pudding at the end of third grade, because we see the third grade reading scores. So what are we doing for the students that are enrolled in pre-K and kindergarten, first and second? Are we properly retaining those students? Because they're moving on to the next grade level. Then when they get in third grade, there's a problem. Now they're taking the standardized test that is showing that you're not reading on grade level. So we really have to look at the rubrics and the grading system for the early learning. Because like you say, draw a picture of what you did today, whereas another child is writing in their journal. So there needs to be consistency so that when they do reach third grade, they are on grade level, and we need to fix what's ever going on for those that are enrolled in pre-K, because many students, well, I don't know the percentage, but by law, they don't have to even enroll until first grade. So that compels the kindergarten teachers not to retain the ones that are there, because another student can just walk in first grade and this child is repeating first grade. So the fix starts at the very, very bottom. That's why we need as many early learning programs as possible, because once they finish third grade, that's when the struggle begins. Yes.
It's real.
Thank you. We need to get ready for what this is going to cost. This is not just a philosophical and emotional thing where I hope everybody feels okay about these decisions. This is going to cost a whole bunch of money, because our system relies on succession. The elementary kids in the school right now have to get out, and they have to go to the middle school, because there's more little people coming. That school has a finite capacity. So if they don't get out, then you have more people in that school. What is that, portables? Was that additional temporary teachers? And more teachers. The schools that are at capacity, they can't lose those seats. The other thing is that everybody's not going to be able to get where they need to be in 12 months. So now you're talking about year-round school, which is going to put more pressure on failing facilities. There's going to be more salary for teachers who need to teach during the summer to get the little people and big people who need to catch up to be where they need to be for the next school. So right-sizing this is not just about getting people intellectually prepared for finding out about scaling. And we're going through this with the federal government too. There's a push to look at the scaling for performance evaluation, because there's the idea that federal employees are being, the grading is scaled up as well. Everybody's getting Bs in some areas. And so this is a national conversation. But if you do that, then that means that we're going to have to, how are we addressing the professional development of people who are not making Bs? How are you addressing the extra effort? You already have a teacher shortage. Maybe there's some teachers that do not want to teach year-round school. Maybe they need that break. But all of the fixes that need to occur to get growth to happen in the young people that are not experiencing that growth is beyond the capacity of the system that we are currently running at the cost that we are currently paying. Because if it could work in our current system, we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing.
It's a lot.
Roger was next.
Okay, so here comes blue sky. We are one of a few districts in the state of Georgia that has an internal audit department. This is why we have an internal audit department. I am so, believe it or not, I'm so encouraged by this conversation. This is transparency. This is saying, you know, we know the emperor doesn't have any clothes on. And the only way we can make progress is to admit it. And that's what we're admitting this morning. You know, one thing I always talk about is I not only want us to have a great school system, I want us to have a world-class school system. The only way that can happen is we have to look under the hood and, look, this is going to be a really bad auto imagery for me because I don't know anything about cars. But look under the hood and see what's going on. And you know, and realizing that you didn't put oil in your car for months. Okay, I did. So, but that's the way it's done. So I am thrilled by this conversation this morning. I'm thrilled every month we have internal audit. I'm thrilled because we are getting down to the truth. And the only way we are going to progress is when we understand the truth and we work on the truth. We have the hard conversations and we make the hard decisions because our kids deserve it. You know, the last thing I'm going to say is the reason this is so important too is I have friends who have kids, and at the beginning of the school year, a lot of their kids know. They know exactly what they need to do to get an A. My one friend's wife, she looks at that power school more than she looks at anything. Okay, she knows exactly what assignment wasn't done, what you made on the test, and at least monthly she sits down with her kids and they have the talk. Okay, so our goal was to get here. Now, to get here, based on, you know, your test scores, you're going to have to make, and it's so funny because you can listen to the kids, and kids will go, "Oh, Mom, it's okay. I can make if I can make an A for the rest of the semester, I'll be good." We need our families to know that. So it's got to be clear. It has to be clear from the teachers. This is what your kid needs. And the only way that it's going to happen is they have to do this. So this is great. Now let me go put some oil in my car.
Ms. Campbell.
I also have kids that use it the other way, and I'll just use mine for example. He would know that as long as he made A's on 2 tests, then he probably didn't need to do 7 or 8 homework assignments because the 2 tests were going to carry him. So why do the homework? Because that's only 10% of the grade. Why do it, right? Because it's not really going to matter when it's put in. These 2 test grades are going to be the 2 things that carry me. So just know that you have kids on the other side of the spectrum who leverage this system in a way to not do things because they know how it's calculated, which to me is just, I mean, it's another way to use it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Ms. Campbell.
And I would still commend him because he clearly knows how to do math. So he's killing math. Okay, so last thing I promise, Dr. Hoskins Brown always stimulates thoughts in me because she always has good things to say. So one thing I thought about just then when you were speaking was the you were talking about, like, it reminded me of the budget conversations last night, and it may cost more money. And I'll go on the record as saying I'm here for that. I don't want to relitigate why and how we got here and all of that. The truth is that we are here. And if we don't fix it knowing it's a problem, we're more than culpable at that point. But when we talk about teacher pay and wanting them to get paid more, I think all of us would agree, and no one would ever say that we think our teachers get paid enough ever. But with that being said, at least my experience hearing from people, et cetera, is that teachers do not quit or not want to be in our district because they don't get paid enough as the number one reason. They don't want to be in our district because of behavior issues. They feel like they can't control their classrooms. There's too many hoops to jump through to get control, 5-step policy of discipline before they can go to the administrator. They get, as Dr. Howard Hall mentioned, they get, just sent class to class, and then is it this teacher's fault that, is it my fault now that I'm going to be held accountable for getting this kid to this level of expectation and understanding and this, knowledge if they haven't learned to read now until 6th grade? So there's a lot of that's happening, and teachers are fed up, and they're like, help me help these students, or I'm done. I'll just go do something else. So I think if we get very serious about this and really honest about it, and we do the hard things, no matter what the outcome is, that we will not have a retention problem. Not to the degree that we do right now. We were just at GSBA, and the people that got up and that were talking, one of the gentlemen said, people ask us all the time, do we have a shortage like they talk about nationally? And he said, absolutely not. Teachers want to work in our district. And I think it's because of their success. And again, I'm sure it is myriad things. And I'm sure pay doesn't, and we are doing all that we can in that category, and we're doing it well with the compensation study. But this is also why I think when it was the last meeting that we talked about, I can't remember when, if it was audit or what, but when we went through the beginning of year, middle of year, and then we were anticipating end of year reading scores. And I asked, so what's the plan for the kids that aren't at grade level? And it was kind of like, oh, well, they might not have to stay they might not have to get fully retained, and we don't want to punish them for having a substitute, I think was said, but I think we should reframe this. It's all adding up cumulatively, their lack of knowledge base and the more that they have to do to get to where they need to be. So if we don't want to retain, we just need something that's concrete and that's evidence-based, that's going to get them where they need to be, or we need to retain them, or we're going to be in the position that, Dr. Hoskins Brown said, which is where you have kids just, getting held back, and now they're all funneled into elementary. Right now, they may be stuck all around the district, but we have to get serious about it. We have to mean what we say, and we have to fix it. I think it will help with teacher retention and the joy of our employees and staff in the district, but I think it'll also demonstrate to parents, which is another issue that we have, parents being on board, the culture. We mean what we say. If your child doesn't meet the requirements, we are looking out for your child. Your child is not being punished. Your child is being loved and expected things of, because we think they are capable and we want them to be successful. And I'm done.
I would just remind the committee that we are on observation 1 of 2.
I'm encouraged to hear that. Neil, my comment is really about, in response to Roger, I like the car analogy a lot. We can throw a car away, though. I think many of us have been in a position where we take a car to the mechanic says, you need an engine. We're like, oh yeah, I'm good on that car. Yeah, I'm not gonna fix that car. I'm gonna get another car. We don't have a choice. We can't throw children away. We can't unpack these data and say, oh man, this is way too hard. Okay, never mind. We don't know there's great challenges. That's the challenge of this work. Whatever the problem is, and whatever the solution is, and that's why I brought up facilities, because it's just not just an academic issue to talk about with academic affairs. When you really unpeel this really is at the level of task force. This really is at a larger level of folks who need to weigh in of, okay, when we start to fix this, the best fix based on what we know about child psychology and teaching and best learning practices and all that. Okay, this is the best academic fix. Then we need everybody at the table for what does that mean logistically? What does that mean for counselors, case managers, social workers, transportation, space and buildings? What new service spaces will we have to create to meet the service needs? And that's why I say all of this is money. All of this is resources that we're not talking about. It's not about just changing rules to tell people that we're changing the expectation. It's changing the rules and then resourcing the supports that make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. It is 9:30. We are not voting on this audit. Correct. So I'm going to take the chairman's privilege and suggest that the second observation begin right away and just ask Mr. O'Connor if he could be as precise and as brief as possible.
So our second observation had to do with the use of district-provided resources, and we found some inconsistency here. So here we're looking at the use of the district learning management system, which is Brightspace, and we're looking at how teachers use district-provided curriculum and resources. For Brightspace, we found that this is used inconsistently across all grade bands. So here we were looking at how teachers use like the homepage where they would post information, course content that's made available to students, assessments, how students either access assessments or submit assessments, and there's a grading feature included. And we found that at all school levels, it was used consistently by less than 50% of the teachers. It was used most frequently at the high school level, least at elementary school, and the assignments feature was the one that was used most consistently by teachers. In talking with teachers, they explained that some of the features of Brightspace already exist in other resources and platforms. So the grading feature of Brightspace is already in PowerSchool. That's where teachers go to enter grades. So they're not going to go enter grades in Brightspace as well because that's just more work for teachers. Or course content, like HMH has a lot of online resources available, so teachers direct their students there to get information and interact with the curriculum instead of going to Brightspace. So that's in talking with teachers how they describe their use. As far as district-provided curriculum, here we interviewed teachers. During interviews, we just asked them what curriculum resources they were using, and then we looked at the district curriculum warehouse, and in talking with district leadership, what resources are teachers expected to use, what's provided and supported by the district. And we found that the majority of the teachers we spoke with are using the resources provided by the district, but also a lot of teachers are supplementing that with outside resources that aren't in those lists of district-provided, district-supported curriculum. So those resources haven't necessarily been vetted by the district, and so and then we looked a little bit at the format of the graded activities, so assessments and classwork activities the teachers are given, and compared those across teachers of the same subject, same course, and found some consistency there. So our recommendations here are to create guidelines related to the use of the district's learning management system and other technological resources that establish clear expectations for teachers at different grade bands, and establish procedures for monitoring teachers' use of supplemental materials to ensure that they align with district-provided curriculum resources and Godot standards.
Thank you, Jack. I'll open it up for comments. I know we've made several before the first one, but are there any other comments?
We knew people weren't using it.
Yeah. Anything?
And really quick, I think this is good for us to look at when we think about what platforms we want to fund in future budgets, because to me, it's not just duplicative, but it seems like, the teachers aren't at fault here for not using this, or we shouldn't be asking them to put stuff on several platforms for their students, and it's probably confusing for students, especially if they switch schools or classes with a different teacher. So maybe we need to find something like, my kids use Schoology, I don't know, something like that, where it all integrates into one platform, and then less confusion, less money that we spend on it.
Thank you. There is no vote required for this, as we discussed, so this was an informational item. I would just close all of these comments, and specifically to our elected leaders, with the quote that got me so active during COVID. Michelle Rhee was the superintendent of DC schools, and she famously said, "It is amazing what children will be made to suffer so that adults can be comfortable in rooms with each other." And so everything we talked about talking to parents and talking to teachers and talking about student evaluations are all adult tasks. That's all adult to adult communication, and we're all worried about that. But somehow we never thought about what are we doing to these children. I mean, there are active lawsuits now. I mean, and that's, I guess, the final statement of America is when we get to a lawsuit. There are 3 active lawsuits against districts right now for this exact thing, that you have let a child graduate. You've given him one of these big fancy diplomas, and they can't read. And so as we go forward, I do agree with you, Dr. Watts. Grading is the only KPI. We talk about KPIs, we talk about ROIs. As a parent, the only KPI, the primary KPI I get from the system, the signal I get through all the noise, is my children's grades. And I will default. Well, they got A's, all right, then things are going well. If they've got D's, then we know things aren't going well. So I think this is as big as you said it was. But I just would ask all of us to remember that it doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable for us. It doesn't matter. So, thank you.
The last item is the internal audit dashboard, and for purposes of time, I will not really discuss it. Does anybody have any questions? And if you don't have any questions at this time, please just email me, and I will respond to the whole group.
Are there any questions? No questions on the dashboard? I thank everybody for their time. Any final comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just asked that we approved our audit calendar in January. We said that we would do meeting requests we would send meeting invitations for the audit committee meeting that people could accept, that we would use to help the staff confirm who was going to be attending. We're not doing that. We're back to sending 2 emails, and we're getting the email pretty close to the meeting.
Okay,
Is
so
this-
is it just the materials or just the invite itself?
It's 2 things, so I did have 2 comments. So the first was the invite. Let's get the invite in the calendar.
Okay,
I have an invite for the September meeting.
I
I don't, I'm just,
don't. I didn't have one for this meeting, so.
okay.
okay.
And the other comment is we're not getting the materials a week in advance, and this was a 59-page document. Did we experience delays that we didn't get it a week in advance, or?
Okay, so you want it by Thursday. In the past, there was only one delay. It wasn't sent on Friday. It was I sent it on Saturday.
Right.
And typically, we send it on Friday. So you're requesting you want it by Thursday? Because we can push it back.
Yes.
Okay.
The original request was to have the document a week before the meeting.
Okay. We will push it to Thursday.
Thank you.
Yep. And I will look into that invite, because I sent those out, so I'm not quite sure what happened.
I'll double check.
Okay. Yeah, and if you see anything on your end, then that way I can get with technology to see what may have happened.
That's a good point. And yeah, I have, we'll go over that. I have a few of them, but I think I have all of them. So are there any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.